Hello everyone, how's it going? Welcome to this bonus episode of Crack a Pack a Day. Normally, I open a booster pack of the current Magic the Gathering set and evaluate the contents as if I were drafting it. However, today we're going to be doing something a little different. Like some of you, I went to a pre-release event for the upcoming Magic set Battle for Zendikar last weekend. I went 2-1 with a rather fun deck, and I got a pack of Battle for Zendikar as a prize. I thought I'd open it here on Crack a Pack a Day in advance of this weekend's general release. As you can see, this pack of Battle for Zendikar is Japanese. That's because I currently live in Japan, so my local store's prize support is Japanese product. One of the interesting differences between English and Japanese product is that Japanese packs are designed to be hung on racks, so it has a hole in the top of the booster pack. And there's also a little bit more room inside the booster pack. It also has a pre-cut notch in the upper right corner, like a lot of other small Japanese sealed items. It's something of a cultural thing. Let's open it up and take a look. I'm going to be putting translations of the cards on the left side of the screen, so don't worry if you can't read Japanese. Another interesting thing about Japanese packs is that the cards are generally placed in the reverse order. You start with the token or add card, the basic land card, then the rare, then the uncommons, and then the commons. I'm going to turn these cards upside down so that we can maintain the usual order of things. Our first card is Gideon's Reproach, an instant for 1 and a white. It deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. 4 damage for 2 mana is a great deal, even if it's to a specific subset of creatures, in this case attackers or blockers. It's pretty efficient, being only a 2-cost instant, which means that you can probably do other things in the same turn. Obviously, it's going to be best in earlier portions of the game, because that's when the 4 damage is going to make the most difference. In the later parts of the game, when your opponent has 5 toughness, 6 toughness, 7 toughness creatures, that 4 damage isn't going to do a great deal. Also of note is that it can't target creatures that aren't attacking or blocking, so it can't do anything about utility creatures. Overall, I think Gideon's Reproach is a pretty good card, and may well be my first pick in this pack. Our next card is Broodhunter Worm, a 4/3 worm creature for 3 and a green. A vanilla 4/3 for 4 is an okay card. It's certainly something you're never really going to cut, but conversely, it's never something you're going to really want to take early. Despite very reasonable stats for its mana cost, I don't think Broodhunter Worm would be my first pick in this pack. Our next card is Call the Scions, a sorcery for 2 and a green. Put 2 1/1 colourless Eldrazi Scion creature tokens onto the battlefield. They have Sacrifice this creature, add 1 colourless to your mana pool. This spell also has Devoid, which means it has no colour. 2 1/1s for 3 aren't really so great unless they have good abilities, but these Scions have the ability to ramp you. You could potentially cast Call the Scions on turn 3. You've added 2 bodies to the board, so if your opponent has played any X1s, they can't really attack without losing them. And if they don't, then on turn 4, you've got 6 mana available. Depending on how powerful your 6-drops are, that could be really good. If you've got specific things that you want to ramp into, or you have cards that give all of your creatures a boost, then this is probably a very good card that you'll want to take a little higher than everyone else. But for Pack 1 Pick 1, I don't think this is something you particularly want to take. Oracle of Dust, a 3/5 Eldrazi processor for 4 and a blue. It has Devoid, so it's colourless, and the activated ability, pay 2 colourless mana, and put a card an opponent owns from exile into that player's graveyard, draw a card, then discard a card. Draw a card, then discard a card, informally known as looting after Merfolk Looter, one of the first cards that had this ability, is very useful. The question is whether 2 mana and processing an opponent's card is a cost worth paying for it. I think the answer to the question depends on how many creatures with ingest, or however many other spells you have that are capable of exiling your opponent's cards. If you've got a load of ingesters and you're capable of exiling a bunch of cards, then I think the 2 mana is a reasonable cost to pay for looting. The 3/5 body for 5 isn't terribly exciting, but it's not unreasonable for that cost. Overall, I think Oracle of Dust is a pretty reasonable card, but I don't think it's powerful enough for me to consider first picking it. Our next card is Stonehaven Medic, a 1/3 core cleric for 1 and a white. It has the ability, pay white and tap it, you gain 1 life. A 1/3 for 2, whilst unexciting, is a perfectly acceptable body, but I'd really like a good ability. The ability to tap and gain a life, whilst normally not great, in this set has a little bit more merit because white-black has a life gain theme, in so much as a lot of white and black cards get bonuses whenever you gain life. On its own, the ability isn't that powerful, and the body isn't that great, so for most decks I don't think you're going to want to be taking this. If you're running the white-black life gain deck though, this could be a very good role player. Either way, I don't think this has the power to be my pick one. Up next, Volcanic Upheaval, an instant for 3 and a red. Destroy target land. In most sets, land destruction is at best a sideboard card and at worst not worth playing. Whilst Battle for Zendikar has a lot of focus on lands, I still don't think this land destruction spell is worth playing. Admittedly, it is at instant speed, which potentially means that you could counter an opponent's Awaken spell, but I don't think that's good enough to consider main decking this. I think that at best Volcanic Upheaval is a sideboard card that's worth bringing into your main deck once you've seen your opponent cast 3 or 4 Awaken spells. As a sideboard card, I don't think this is worth picking first. Ghostly Sentinel is a 3/3 core spirit for 4 and a white. It has flying and vigilance. If this were a 3/3 flying vigilance creature for 4 mana, this would be an extremely good card, but as it is, that extra mana makes it, merely an okay card. It's still a 3/3 flyer, which is a very good body in the air, and the vigilance is good because it allows you to block even after attacking. I just wish you got a little bit more for that 5 mana. I think this is a pretty solid card, but I don't think it has the power to be worth considering for pack one, pick one. Belligerent Whiptail is a 4/2 worm for 3 and a red. It has the landfall ability. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, it gains first strike until end of turn. The body is a little unimpressive. 4 power for 4 mana is alright, but that 2 toughness is not so good. The landfall ability is very nice. A 4 power first striker is very hard to kill. Having said that, you're not really going to get many chances to activate the ability, and outside of 2 particular green spells, you're not going to be able to do it on your opponent's turn. That means Belligerent Whiptail is going to be very good in an aggressive deck, and when cast on turn 4, but at any other time is simply going to be average. Overall, it's probably going to see play in a number of red decks, but I don't think it's worth taking first here. Culling Drone, a 2/2 Eldrazi drone for 1 and a black. It has Devoid, making it colourless, and Ingest. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player exiles the top card of his or her library. Culling Drone is a 2/2 for 2, a so-called bear, with upside, in that every time it hits your opponent, he must exile the top card of his library. This ingest ability allows you to send cards to the exile zone to allow your processors to use them later in the game. In the best case scenario, this guy's going to come down on turn 2, and hopefully on turn 3 you're going to be able to start attacking. Even in the worst case scenario, it's a 2-2 for 2, which makes it a reasonable card. Overall, you're probably never going to cut it from any of your black decks, but I don't think I want to take him pack one, pick one. Skyline Cascade is a land that enters the battlefield tapped. When it enters the battlefield, target a creature an opponent controls doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step, and you can tap it to add blue to your mana pool. I actually had a Skyline Cascade in my pre-release deck, and it played pretty well, having a spell that, if I had it early, I could just play it and it would basically be an island, but later in the game it doubled as a spell, as well as triggering landfall. One thing to note is that it doesn't tap the creature that you target. It's only if it's already tapped that it doesn't untap. As long as you're not playing a super aggressive blue deck, I don't think there's much of a penalty for putting one or two of these into your deck. I think it's a reasonably good card, but it's not something I want to take first. Ondu Rising, a sorcery for 1 and a white. Whenever a creature attacks this turn, it gains lifelink until end of turn. It also has Awaken 4 for 4 and a white, so if you cast the spell for 4 and a white, you also put 4 +1/+1 counters on a target land you control, and it becomes a 0/0 elemental creature with haste. It's still a land. I don't think that the base form of this spell, a 2-mana sorcery that grants all of your creatures lifelink until end of turn, is very good. However, when you take the Awaken into account, it gets a lot better. At that point, you've got two options. You either pay 5 mana for a 4/4 creature, or 6 mana for a 4/4 creature with haste that has the additional ability that when it enters the battlefield, your creatures gain lifelink until end of turn. A 4/4 for 5, or a 4/4 with haste for 6, you kind of have to count it as 6 because you need to cast it on an untapped land to be able to attack with it that turn, with that enter the battlefield ability, isn't unreasonable. And the bigger the board you have, the better it is. You'll probably get a very big life swing. Now, in the worst case scenario, you're dealing 4 damage and you're gaining 4 life, because you've only got the creature that the land gets turned into. But it's not so hard to believe that you might have a slightly bigger board, and thus you'd have a much bigger life swing. Overall, I think Ondu Rising is a reasonable card, but probably not worth taking as a pack one pick one. Akum Stonewaker, a 2/1 human shaman for 1 and a red. He has a landfall ability. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2 and a red. If you do, put a 3/1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste onto the battlefield. Exile that token at the beginning of the next end step. To begin with, a 2/1 for 2 isn't a terrible body for that mana cost. And the ability is all upside. Theoretically, you could cast this guy on turn 2, then on turn 3 you play a 3rd land, pay the mana cost, and immediately get a 3/1 creature. Now, you do have to exile that token at the beginning of the next end step, so it's probably not worth doing this early in the game. Early in the game, you want to build up your board. You'd rather play a 3-cost creature on turn 3 than to pay 3 for a temporary creature like this. He gains a little bit of a benefit later in the game, where you're not always able to use all of your mana every turn, giving this 2-drop a little bit of a bonus. Overall, I can't see cutting this card from many decks, but I don't think I fancy taking him first. Halimar Tidecaller, a 2/3 human wizard ally for 2 and a blue. When it enters the battlefield, you may return target card with Awaken from your graveyard to your hand. Land creatures you control have flying. A 2/3 for 3 isn't very exciting. You'll play it if you have to, but you probably rather wouldn't. Both of Halimar Tidecaller's abilities scream build around me, specifically around Awaken cards. It allows you to get back an extra Awaken card that you've already used, and it gives the creatures that you've animated with Awaken flying. In terms of power level, in the right deck I think this is a very good card. If you get critical mass of Awaken cards, then this is a very good engine and potentially a win condition. If you've animated a number of lands throughout the game and then play Halimar Tidecaller, they could potentially all attack in for the win. I'm a little wary about taking this pack one pick one, because with Awaken being primarily focused in white and blue, taking this is almost akin to taking a white-blue gold card, and I'm not sure I want to commit that heavily to a colour pair in pack one pick one. I like the card, but I don't like the commitment to colours that it implies taking it pack one pick one. Our rare is Sanctum of Ugin, a land. It taps for a colourless mana. It also has the triggered ability, whenever you cast a colourless spell with converted mana cost 7 or greater, you may sacrifice Sanctum of Ugin. If you do, search your library for a colourless creature card, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. This card feels like a win more card to me, because by the time you've cast a colourless spell of 7 cost or greater, well, you're probably in the process of winning the game. Notice that the colourless spell you have to cast doesn't necessarily have to be a creature. There are some non-creature colourless spells with mana cost 7 or greater which could be used to trigger this to get you a creature. Obviously, you also need to have colourless spells that cost 7 or more, so if you're an aggro deck, this isn't the sort of card that you want. Honestly, I don't like this card all that much, and I don't really want to take it pack one pick one. There's also an Eldrazi Scion token and a swamp. Let's have a quick review of what we've got. And here's our pack. To me, the only card that really leaps out is Gideon's Reproach. It's a cheap, efficient piece of removal that, amongst other things, kills every creature in this pack with the exception of the Oracle of Dust. It even kills the Awakened land that Ondu Rising creates. This early in a format, it's sometimes very difficult to judge how synergistic the different synergies will be, so sometimes taking the cheap, efficient removal is a good tip. Gideon's Reproach is my pick for this pack. And that's about all we've got time for today in this bonus episode. If you disagree with my choice, then please let me know in the comments below, on Facebook, or on Twitter. Have a good day now!